everyone else tuning in. Andrew Bloom from my neck of the woods, Southern California, Los Angeles area, team leader, entrepreneur. He wears a lot of hats, but most importantly, we're going to talk about the organizational model that he uses to be profitable. And I think as we're switching through what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, the proposed NAR settlement, that's at the forefront of everybody's mind. How do we become more profitable and really pivot into this next new world? Where do we start with profitability for you?
I tell you what, I absolutely love this industry. I'm super passionate about it. Our growth in this industry is sequential, and we earn certain rights as we progress and master certain elements of it. And if we just simply break down the, what allows somebody to be able to expand and grow their business, right? Like, what does that look like? And how do you grow and maintain profitability? And so the first thing in my journey was I mastered lead generation at a really, really high level.
Okay.
Where it became extremely predictable and scalable and duplicatable. And I spent 20 years at Remax mastering the lead generation model. As an independent agent at Remax, that philosophy, that culture is really geared to the individual agent mastering lead generation. That's kind of why Dave Liniger created and founded Remax. Was he didn't want to be a coaching and training company. He wanted expert people that really were really mastering lead generation and could sustain their business that way. And so I mastered lead gen at a really, really high level. And it wasn't until
what did that look like for you though, mastering lead gen? Where did the opportunities come from for you?
It really started with geographical farming. When I got in the business, I was farming 200 doors.
Okay.
Because I wanted to adopt a block, own my street. I wanted to, really be an active member in my community, in my neighborhood. And I didn't have the resources to do more than that. And we didn't have the internet. It wasn't with the internet in 1995 wasn't a lead generation vehicle. Our business was very analog and not digital. And so it was very high touch. So 200 doors, it took me about a year to kind of master a cadence and a rhythm around those 200 doors. Well, I felt safe and comfortable expanding to 500 doors. And then about 2 years later, I felt very safe and comfortable, meaning I had a cadence and a rhythm to farming and being able to touch people. We'll just call it a 36 touch campaign. Now we know it's about 100, but where I had a calendar, I had an editorial calendar, which you're very good at sharing editorial calendars with your group to be able to use. Once you master that editorial calendar and that cadence and that rhythm, the lead generating and staying in touch with people and being in front of people and gaining top of mind awareness, then you can scale that. And so I went from 200 doors to 500 doors to 4,000 doors. And I continued to farm 4,000 doors for 20 years, but I didn't know how I could farm 10,000 doors or 20,000 doors or increase my lead generation because it was really just me. And so I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't understand or have the knowledge of how to scale and grow as an entrepreneur, as an agent who had mastered lead generation. How can I share business or share leads? What do splits look like? What is all, how can I maintain profitability and scale and grow my business? Yeah. And so it wasn't until I took a class called Expansion Systems Orientation. You're familiar with it, but it's the introduction of the 4 models within the MREA. Model number 2 is the organizational model. when I was taught the organizational model, the light bulb went off for me. And I went, my gosh, I could be a rainmaker. I've mastered this lead generation at a really high level. If I can master the organizational model, if I can master the model of how to be able to maximize all the leads that I'm generating and be able to distribute those to agents with profitability, well, it kind of brought everything together. It really made sense for me. And so I did that at a really high level. What happened, Tristan, was I'd done 40 million a year in production for 20 years at Remax, and I could never get past 40 million in production.
Okay.
After I took the course and I continued learning to the intimacies around the organizational model, my first year, and I stayed at Remax. My first year, I went to 58 million. The second year, my second year, I went to 72 million. My third year, I went to 83 million. My fourth year, I went to 98 million. My fifth year, I went to 158 million. My sixth year, I went to 183 million. And the seventh year, I went to 186 million. And so in 7 years from learning the concept, I went from 40 million to 183 million, simply because I realized that I had the gift of being able to generate leads and lead generate at a high level, and then be able to distribute those leads to my team and maintain profitability, because I mastered within the organizational model, or within the budget model of the MREA, it's a 40, 30, 30, right? 40% profit, 30% expenses, and 30% cost of sell. Your cost of sell is the money that you spend to close a real estate transaction that's due upon and only upon the successful closing of a transaction, cost of sell. So how are we going to generate leads and distribute those leads to agents and maintain a 30% cost of sell? And that's what I mastered. That's what I really learned how to do at a really high level, was to be able to generate all the leads, distribute those leads to my agents in a way that allowed them to make money and use the leads and the business that I was generating to generate even more business. And so
Andrew, how would we do it? Where do we start in regards to creating an organizational model that allows us to profit more from the prospecting that we're either doing, or the lead generation that we're bringing into the picture?
Yeah, I think the first step is to evaluate or identify, what is your role in the business? Are you a rainmaker? Do you have a passion and an intensity for generating leads? Do you know how to generate good quality leads? You know, can you do that? And mastering that, there's you've got to be obsessed with the lane that you choose to be in, and when you're obsessed with lead generating and you can generate a bunch of leads, that is the only thing that allows you then and gives you the right to bring other people into your world that are relying on you for the business, or for a part of the business, right? We know that as rainmakers, we want our agents that are on our teams to generate their own business, grow their own businesses, but we also want to have our business handled and covered by them. As Gary says, it's our job as the rainmaker to bake the cake, and it's the job of the agents on the team to bring in the icing, right? So we have the recipe to bake the cake. We have the cake recipe, and we master the cake recipe. And when we give out little pieces of the cake, it's the team's job to go take those pieces of the cake and go make more cake. But if you're going to eat my cake, you've got to bring the icing to it, and if you're going to make your own cake, if you're following my recipe, great. If you're not going to follow my recipe, then, go do it on your own. But this concept of, so what does that look like? And I'm going to share my independent contractor agreement with you, so we can kind of go over the nuts and bolts of it in a nutshell. And I would really hope that as we move forward, more and more rainmakers will focus on the good that they do in the community and generating seller leads by being, really positioned well in the market as the economist of choice, as the expert in the neighborhood, as the community liaison, as the mayor. And so, generating meaningful leads, intimate relationships, and how do you do that? And what does that look like? So, as an example, on my team, so I run a team in Arizona and I run a team in Los Angeles. I'm not in Arizona, but 1 or 2 days a month, but I still do, a couple $100 million a year in production out of Arizona, but I'm not there but 1 or 2 days a month.
Okay.
So I generate a seller lead, right? I generate a seller lead, and these seller leads come from the lead generation activities that I've mastered. So a seller lead comes in and an appointment's booked. And an appointment can be booked through me or my ISAs or however that appointment's booked. Whoever's going out here's the thing. This business, this life that we live is intended to be reciprocal. We have the universe is a reciprocal universe. We breathe in oxygen that we receive from the trees. We exhale carbon dioxide that the trees receive from us. All of life is a reciprocal relationship. So the reciprocity component of this is really, really important. So when I generate a seller lead, I'm always sending 2 or 3 agents on every listing appointment. I'm always going on a listing appointment with 1 or 2 other agents. There's always a minimum of 2 agents involved that are responsible for the listing, and then an agent in training or sort of, I don't want to call it a runner, but somebody that can fill in the gaps. The main agent that's going on a listing appointment, they max out at 20%. They max out at 20%. Now, I've got agents that have been with me for more than 10 years, and I've created step-ups within my splits so they can actually get to 25%. They can get to 25%.
Okay.
And so, but on a listing with a 30% cost of sell, you've got enough room in there to have a senior agent at 20 to 25% and a junior agent at 5 to 10%. And so let me share my screen. Hopefully I'm tethered to my phone. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to drop in my ICA.
Okay, I see it. Yeah.
You see that? Okay. So my independent contract agreement for team members, Schedule A, commission structure and payment. Team member buyer and seller transactions. Buyer and seller business resulting from team member prospecting. Team member prospecting. When they're prospecting, right? Past clients, sphere of influence shall result in a 70% split with the team member working with the buyer or seller. And then 30% to me. So that's the icing. So if they're generating business on their own, I get 30%, they get 70%. I'm not the one doing that prospecting effort. They are. They get a bonus for any transaction the team member gets under contract from their data dump within 60 days after joining my team. They get 90%. I get 10%. And there's a minimum fee that I collect of $1,000. Now, here's what happens. So when they start off on my team, if they're a new agent in the business, right, then they start off at OSA level 1, which is outside sales agent level 1. 0 to 5 transactions, and they get 5%. So what'll happen is a senior agent, which is my OSA 4s, at 20% will bring an OSA 1 or an OSA 2 with them on an appointment. So the senior agent will get 20%. The junior agent may get 10. There may be 2 junior agents at 5. And so this is kind of how that team structure works. Now they do have an ability to be at senior agent. I have 4 senior agents in Arizona that can get 25%. They've had to close 5. They've had to be with me 5 years or close 36 listings with me. And then it kind of breaks down. I'm going to share this with you in the chat so that you can then have a copy of it, and we'll give you permission to be able to view it.
Dude, I love this.
So what ends up, it's pretty. I mean, and then we have a whole revenue share program where everybody's getting paid on every transaction. We have a point system. Our weekly FUB leader is going to get 1 point. Right? If they're a point leader, they get 3 points. And so I'm taking 10% of my commission and putting it into a revenue share.
Got it.
That's a whole nother deal. Let me go into, let's just stay with this. So, it's really, I think it's really, really important for people that want to develop teams and grow teams that, number one, you've got to have a really strong lead generation presence. You've got to be able to generate good leads, And so, if they're bad leads, you're not necessarily deserving of taking high splits. If the agents are the ones responsible for cultivating, nurturing, curating, converting all those leads, they should be getting 70% of that business. And you should be getting 30%. But if you're generating good quality leads, and I should say, if you're generating appointments, especially listing appointments, we have a different program for, see if I can't find it in here. Let's see. I'm in here, and I was going to go into so ICA,
listen, Andrew, you can just share the whole folder with us. We'd love that.
Yeah, I'll share the whole entire folder. So the important thing is that you do have to have an independent contractor agreement. And as the rainmaker, it's like, people want to bring people onto their teams or grow a team, and they haven't mastered lead generation. But once you've mastered lead generation, and it's so important to follow the organizational model appropriately. And the organizational model says that your cost of sell can't exceed 30%. What that's really saying is that the business that the rainmaker is generating on their own, like the team generated business, needs to be at a 30% cost of sell. If the agent's generating their own business, right, then the inverse is true. 30% to the team and 70% to the agent, right? And it's just, I think people get away from the model, follow the models. The path is in the map. We all know that, right? And so, if you've got a weak value proposition, if your leads are weak, then your splits are going to need to be, commensuratory to the value of the leads, right? So if you're a really skilled lead generator and you're generating great leads, or you're generating a ton of leads and you've got a really good ISA department, then the handoff of those leads is going to afford you the ability to keep your cost of sell at 30%. Our buyer leads are 50-50 unless we book the appointment. Then there's a 10% ISA fee, and it's 60-40.
Okay.
But otherwise, if they're working in FUB and they're working our leads, it's a 50-50 split on the buyer side. Yes.
So right now, the way that your team is creating the opportunities, like leads and all that, prospecting, Where are most of those opportunities coming for your team? Are they coming from online into FUB, so Google PPC, Facebook, Zillow, Realtor.com? Or are you also doing traditional like mailing and that sort of stuff? What does that look like?
Yeah. I probably shouldn't say this on Passover, but it's kind of the German war machine. You got to do everything, but you got to do it well. You got to do it to win it, right? You can't
It's
do it.
true.
You can't do it
It just can't
haphazard.
be one pillar, right? Yeah.
It's not. They're coming in from lots of different sources, but I'm I have 28 listings in Arizona right now, about $40 million worth of active inventory. And, it's those, my seller listings are generally, they're coming from farming. They're coming from,
Mm.
Facebook, postcards, magazines, newsletters, being in front of people. I have every day. I had one today. I had a call today, $9 million come list me. 9 million come list me in Arizona. And so, now for that appointment, I'll fly in. I'll fly on an hour flight. I'm going to fly in. I'll bring 2 agents with me and I'll never go back to the property again. Right. If I had to, I could, but you know, generally, my job as a rainmaker and then being able to, you know, I have a listing right now. Well, I've got one at 10.5 million that I didn't have to fly in for. I've got another one that just went on the market yesterday for 6.5 million that I didn't have to fly in for. This one at 9
Nice.
million, the one at 9 million, I got to fly in for it. I just know I got to fly in for it.
Of course.
Yeah. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And so, it's the matter of, you know, being really hyper focused, and mastering the fundamentals, because that's really what it's all about at a really high level, and then if you can really master your online lead generation, you know, and I that's where I could use some work, but because I'm more analog than I am digital.
Mhm.
But it's really peeling the onion back on the organizational model in your ICA and how you structure that. I think that's really the important thing is, if you're a lot of people will get into this business or want to build a team and they haven't earned the right. They maybe they know how to lead generate, but the quality of the lead, anybody can generate 10,000 leads, right? But
Yeah.
what's the quality of those leads, right? So your right to be able to expand and grow your team and attract and have retention and attract talented people, you know, the is really important. And it comes down to the quality of your leads and also your culture, the way that you show up is really important. Being in integrity and doing the right things and all that stuff is super important as well because you don't want turnover, and
Yeah. I think that's probably a whole other webinar that we can do, Andrew. All right, last question for you before I let you go. Um, if you were going to go into a brand new market, so right now you're in LA, Arizona, let's say you're going into another higher end market, what would be the first, second, or third thing you do to start lead generating?
yeah. You saturate to dominate, and salt the board. In other words, identify. Let's say I'm going to go into Malibu, just as an example. I'm gonna identify 10,000 doors in Malibu. I'm going to drop an 8x8 campaign to them. So I'm going to drop an 8x8 campaign to 10,000 doors. I'm going to use Clipper Magazine, whose postcards printed and mailed are under 35 cents a piece, right? So for $3,500 a month, I can mail a postcard to 10,000 doors. If I'm doing an 8x8 campaign, now I'm looking at about $10,000 a month to hit somebody every 10 days with a postcard, right? $10,000 a month. Every 10 days, they're getting a postcard. I'm saturating to dominate. Now, what I'm doing is I'm taking those same addresses and I'm retargeting them across social media platforms, right? So it's like with literally within a very short window of time, at the end of the 8x8 campaign, you should be able to pick up a listing, and so it's, You come in, salting the board simply just means that you're launching your 8x8 campaign, you're saturating the market, and you're doing it in a cost-effective way. I'm big on local, hyper local publications, like Into publication, lifestyle publications, that where you can start dropping some content. Very different than like a Homes and Land magazine that's an ego magazine. If you're going to take over Malibu, get into some of the local Malibu community publications. But before you do that, you have to salt the board. You got to run your 8x8 campaigns, and then you can run all of those addresses and contacts through Ylopo, or whatever other platform you want to use, so that you can retarget and be in front of these people digitally, but reinforce through your 8x8 campaign. And value engineering what you're doing financially is so important. To spend $1 a postcard, Clipper is a 10,000 door minimum, but you're a third of the cost of a postcard. So you're really farming $10,000 for the cost of, farming 3,500 doors. Right. So it's
Very
really
true.
like,
That's
if you want to go big.
Yeah.
If you're not ready for that, then you start at, 2,000 doors, and you saturate and dominate your 2,000 doors, and then expand from there. Right. So
Agreed. I like that, man. I like that. Every 10 days too. Have you thought about, so going a little crazier, have you thought about sending 3 a week to start? And being like, okay, I'm going to really saturate you.
I will tell you that if you send 2 a month, if you do an 8x8 campaign and send 2 a month, or if you go from an 8x8 to an 8x4, right? Or 4x8, four postcards every 8 weeks.
Okay.
Did I do that right? 8? No, 8. Yeah. 8x8.
4 postcards every. Yep.
So anyway, if you're dropping, and I've done it and I still do it, but if you're dropping, you get to a point where you're dropping 1 a week. I mean, that's insane. 3 a week, there's no reason for it. And twice a month, people think you're in their mailbox every single day anyway. Right.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do that. An 8x8.
I'm going to hit you up, dude. We're looking to do 1 a week now, because what you do is what we do, but we needed to level it up. So I might be hitting you up just to
I'm here,
bounce some ideas.
And I apologize for the being at the airport, the poor disconnection, but anyway, that's that. If anybody wants any help or has any questions or needs anything, I'm more than happy to share my resources.
All right, Andrew, I will make sure to hit you up. And also, I'll plan on bringing you back again so we can dig further into this, because I think I'd love to go into what the mailers look like as far as just a cadence, call to action, expectations, farm. I think that would really help out a lot.
The other thing is, I use CallFire for everything that I do. So every call is recorded, every source is tracked, right? So postcards have one phone number, magazines have a different phone number, signs have a different phone number. They all go through CallFire, and then I use Call Ruby. So if I can't answer the phone, or if my team doesn't answer the phone, it never goes to voicemail. It always goes to a 24-hour live answering service. Right. So between CallFire and Call Ruby, that's leverage that you can't go without.
That's very true. Someone always has to pick up, because you miss the opportunity otherwise. That's such a great point, Andrew.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to get into that, man. I want to dissect that part. Andrew, a happy Passover. Thank you for jumping in. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, brother. Thanks, Tristan. All right.
Thanks, bro.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.